Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a first submission by Val of her horse Fonzie. First thing I wanted to say is what a great job you're doing. I have watched the entire tape, of course, and you are really getting this horse to a good place a lot of the time. We'll talk about a few things as we go on, but for the most part, I just want to congratulate you for doing such a great job on your own, following our instructions, and just doing it on your own. And I want everyone to see that. You know, you don't need to go hire an expensive horse trainer, so to speak. Most of them won't start horses anyway these days. So, you know, if you just work on your own with your horses, you can get a long way with them doing the right things. Because correct training is based on the idea of bringing the horse into a zone of comfort for itself, you know, eliminating any kind of pain for the horse and showing them how to move in a way that they are comfortable with and are usually more than happy to do. Once they realize that there isn't going to be pain involved in it and they're going to be comfortable, they can begin to learn that this is a fun game, and that's the kind of horses that you want to ride. It's a whole different thing. As Bill Steinkraus said very famously, if you can't get them to like it, it's not going to be worth much. Well, that's very, very much true. I don't know how so many people ride horses that look so miserable and how they just don't hear a thing the horse is saying back to them. But anyway, getting on here, you are just doing a wonderful job with this. This is a nice swinging walk for this horse. He comes up and down a little bit, and you have moments where it's better than others. But there you go, like that, big stretch. And, everyone look, as soon as the horse puts its head down, watch how the hocks start moving better. Remember, dressage is about creating movement, not creating a static picture. It's about dynamic movement. So it's all about watching that back end all the time. Most people, unfortunately, spend too much time staring at the head and neck of their horses, and that has little to do with what is really going on. You want to look at the back end of the horse and see what's happening. So watch how all these things affect the horses. So as you see this horse, as it stretches down, you'll see how its hocks start to move a little more in a circular fashion. The swing of the walk becomes more active as you start to get it right there. There you go, like that. That's really nice. So this is all very good. I love how you're keeping the line. You're keeping the slack out of the line just as if you would, and you're staying close enough to the horse with a correct lunge whip that you're able to keep the horse moving when you need to and tap the horse when you need to. That's exactly how it should be done. And I like how you're moving around the ring. Sometimes we like to go in circles, and sometimes you can take the horse down the rail. In other words, correct lunging, just think of it once again, it's just riding from the ground. You have the rein in your hand, which is contacted to the bridle at this point in the horse's career, and you have the whip that is your leg. So that's essentially it. You're sending the horse forward into the contact with the bridle, just as you would be doing. Now this is really a good walk right there. Very, very, very nice. Now we can still see with this horse that her belly is a little bit hanging down there, a little bit pendulous, as I like to say. And we'd like to see that drawn up, and I'm sure it will as you get this horse working over its back a little more. There's a nice swinging walk there, but that's starting to come really, really nicely. I'm just always amazed, if people can realize that, most horses are really better than people think they are if they've never been over their back. It's amazing how different they can move. So that was really good walk work. I liked it a lot. It was swinging and active, and pretty consistently into the stretch, so that was good. Now here going into the trot, I feel like this is just a little bit pokey, even though she's stretching down. I do want to ask for just a little bit more than that. That's a good stretch in it, though. That's coming nicely. Now, once you get that, just see if you can get her, him rather, a little more active. So we would like to see those hocks making a little rounder circle, which is one of the signs that we look for. So you could send him on just a little bit more than this, so you get a little more activity behind. But the stretch is coming really well. You're keeping a pretty good rhythm there. But it could just have a little more swing in it. So once you get that, a little more active. Now, I have to comment on this because everyone should be careful of this. Dust is actually a very dangerous thing, and it's full of all kinds of bacteria, and it's not good for you or the horse. So if you can, always try to ride your horses in a dust-free environment as much as you can, because, when you get the horse stretching like that and his nose is on the ground and you have as much dust as you have in your arena, he's going to be sucking a lot of that up in his nose, as well as you are. So, dust is kind of the enemy. So if you can, I'd have a little more water on your arena than you've got here, because it isn't healthy for you or the horse to breathe that dust. It can be full of all kinds of bacteria. Horses go to the bathroom in it all the time. So you got to think about that. What you're breathing all the time is very important. You don't want to create an environment for yourself, where you're killing yourself with horse dust, which can be done. I mean, it's not a healthy thing. We've even had cases in St. Louis where a guy sprayed all this dioxin on indoor arenas, and a lot of trainers got very sick from the dust of that. So just a little more water on the arena to make it a little more comfortable for you and the horse breathing wise. And I certainly don't let it get any dustier than this. Now, the biggest thing that I've noticed with this horse, as I did under saddle as well, is I would stay away from the canter very much with this horse, maybe once a week at this point, but the under saddle work was very hollow and didn't really help the horse at all. So if you can't get the horse over its back in the gait, remember, you know, it's once again, if you want to try for a few minutes, great, but if you can't get it, there's no point. You must step back to whatever exercise came before it, even if that's lunging, and get the horse back over its back again, because just to canter along, you know, with the horse hollow just doesn't do any good. So with this horse, I would try the canter maybe once a week at this point, and especially under saddle. I wouldn't try it under saddle at all until it starts looking better on the lunge line. That is, if the horse can't get over its back on the lunge line, it's probably not going to get over its back with you on its back either. So that's kind of what we look for in the rules of thumb of how, you know, we go training horses. I mean, if I get a horse into the contact on the lunge line, it's going to be a fight if I get up there, so why bother? So when you get it right on the groundwork right, then you get on the back and you'll find it much easier. So take a look at that canter. You see he really disengages in the canter. You know, some horses have better canters than they do trots. This horse is not one of them. So you need to stay away from that a little bit for a while longer so she gets stronger. As I said, he gets stronger. I would try that about once a week or so and just see how it's looking. But you did good walk work and good trot work there. So remember that it's the strength of the back that will improve the canter. So to just canter endlessly doesn't do anything but increase a little cardiovascular fitness, but it can really be hard on the horse's back if they hollow as much as this one does in the canter. So just not quite ready for that. But your walk work is good and your trot work is good. So just know that if you do those things, you know, the canter will improve all by itself. And, you know, that's the point of all the videos that I make here and of sending these videos in, you know, how I can help you is that you know, most people have never taken a horse through this process, and that's why I've done my videos, because I want people to see how horses develop, because that's what's missing from most people's equine education. A, they don't know how to get them over their top line, and B, they don't know how long it takes to develop them once that happens. So once you understand it, you have the confidence to go on doing what you're doing and not being in a big rush, you know, because I guarantee you'll get there much faster by doing it this way than any other way, because if you start fighting with the horse, you're simply not going to get anywhere, and that's all that's going to happen if you try to ride a horse that just can't get over its back. You're going to run into difficulties on some level, you know, and or you're going to end up with the horse behind the bit, as we see so many these days that aren't really on the bit, but they're broken in the neck and this kind of thing. And we don't want any of that because we want our horses to last a long time, and that's the problem. Remember, that's the point of all this. We're putting the shock absorbers on it. So think about that. You know, if you drove your car and you got to 50 miles an hour and the shock absorbers no longer worked and you felt every bump of the road, well, you wouldn't drive faster than 50. Well, the same thing is true of the horse. Be aware of what you're feeling through you when you're working the horse, and you know, when you feel that hollow feeling, which usually makes whatever gait you're in much more jarring and halting. You know, if you feel that, just know, like your car, you know, you're wearing out the tread on the tires a little bit by doing that. So that's not what we want to do. So take your time. If you read the old Spanish riding school manual, they used to lunge horses for a full year before they ever started any canter at all. And when they start the canter, the horse can canter. So they're all a little different. You know, and the modern horses tend to you know, their conformation is a little better and they get there a little quicker, but that still has to guide what we do. In other words, whether the horse can get over its back or not is what guides everything in the training. And once it gets over its back, then the rhythm guides everything. So over the back first, and then the rhythm of everything beyond that. In other words, if you lose the rhythm, you usually are losing the back, and you must reestablish both. But this is, once again, a good walk for this horse. It's getting stretchier all the time. Once again, you see how his belly there is just kind of hangs out a little bit on the sides. That tells me he's just not been over his back for very long. He's carrying maybe a little extra pounds there. And you see as he goes into that trot, watch how different when he does start to stretch. He kind of looks like he's just kind of plodding along there a little bit, and then he stretches. Watch how much freer the hock starts to move back there. But same thing here. I'd like to see you move him just on a little more now. Once you get that stretch, I just want to see a little bigger swing in it. I feel like he's ready to go on just a little bit more. Now, the one thing I would check, I'm not sure if I can't see whether this horse has shoes on or not, but I did notice that when he came down after one of the canter transitions, you know, he looked a little footsore. So just double check that and be sure, you know, if you have the horse barefoot, just be very aware that they can become very sore very quickly. It's one thing to have a horse barefoot, you know, that you ride once a week. It's another thing to have a horse barefoot that you're riding every day and expecting to develop and work. We don't find many horses are able to do that without wearing their feet down too far and ending up sore in the feet if we really keep them in the kind of work that we do, you know, where they're working consistently 5 days a week. Especially here in the West, you know, we find it, you know, the ground is just so hard here and rocky, and it's so like sandpaper everywhere you go. So they really grind their feet down. And you got to remember, the horses are not animals that were, you know, meant to be on hard surfaces and on rough abrasive surface. They have the kind of feet that they have because they developed in marshlands, you know, to be able to spread that weight out, you know, so they could walk on soft ground. Once again, that's why England has always been the, you know, the homeland of 3-day eventing, because they rain so much there and they have such a long grass growing season. The root system goes down so deep into the grass that there's a lot of support. Though I used to fox hunt over in England, boy, once you you know, when you fox hunted through an area once a year, it was about all you could do, because it would just be like a plow going through, because that is so wet over there. So you'd have to be careful of that. But the initial people were doing great, you know, the people at the front of the field, so to speak. But when you start sinking in, so once again, that's the idea. So let's try to just check on that a little bit. I just see once in a while this horse just looks like he might be just a little bit tender in front to me. Especially after those downward transitions from the canter. But that can also just be him just being a little hollow and landing on his front legs, which is also, again, why I did want you to stay away from the canter a little bit. So once again, this trot's looking a little better, though it could be stretched a little more there, but you're getting him a little more active. So what I want is a little yet more activity with just a little more stretch in it. You can work a little closer to him. Maybe keep him a little closer to you and get him a little more active with your whip there a little bit. And once again, if you have to canter a few strides to activate him a little bit, that's okay if you feel like that helps him to move out and, you know, a little bit, you know, if it just gets him a little energized, so to speak, good. But if you do that, don't do it for very long at all, a circle or so, and come right back to the trot, because he's just too unbalanced in the canter yet to be able to do that and have any real value. But your walk and trot work is coming really, really well, both on the lunge and under saddle. You know, once again, like with here, it's not 100% consistent all of the time, but you're well on your way to getting it there, and you have the correct adjustment of the side range. That's really good, just allowing the horse. I just want to see you get him a little more active and through a little bit more on the lunge line. Now, this wouldn't be a bad horse to start just doing like a single pole on the ground. That is, you know, set it up someplace so you have a guide. In other words, the pole comes straight off the rail someplace, and you have a guide pole on either side to guide him into the chute, so to speak. And just going over a single pole, this horse does look like he just could, you know, use a little activity lifting up those hocks a little bit. But of course, that's now look how he stretches there. Now look how much deeper he steps. That's what we want to see. But once again, just a single pole can sometimes help them just to, you know, pull their hock up a little bit and just get a little bit of activity. I'm a big believer in the use of cavaletti. It really helps them, especially, you know, for those of us who ride dressage, and we only ride dressage in an arena, we don't go out a lot. You know, we have to, and we don't get hill work and that sort of thing, correct hill work with the horse over their backs. Let me point that out. It does no good to take horses out hollow and go up and down hills. That will not do anything for them at all. But if you can keep them over their backs up and down hills, then it will do wonders for them in varying terrain. But since a lot of us, especially here in California, we really have nowhere to ride except in riding arenas, you know. So we need to replace a little of that, you know, by using a little cavaletti, just so, you know, they get the idea of lifting up their hocks a little more. Just adds that little bit to them. It makes them work a little bit harder. As I said, back when I was a kid, they'd have us take the lazy ones out through the corn rows, you know, and trot them through there, so they had to really lift their legs up. So this is a pretty nice swinging walk. It'd be a little more over the back there. But once again, all that work was good. Just leave out the canter, except for maybe once in a while, every week or so on that lunging work, and add a trot pole there if you want to. That might help him a little bit, but mostly just get him sending on a little more. So stretch a little more consistent and just a little more active. But I'm sure that's going to come as nicely as you're doing everything else here. There he goes. As I said, you know, you do a good job, and I'd rather see someone like you take their time, you know, and this is just always amazing to me how, you know, I see Olympic riders who can't stretch a horse as good as you are stretching this one right here, you know, so who can even get that out of them, you know, just because they just don't have a concept of it, you know. We've got to get out of our minds that dressage is this thing of pulling horses together like a saddlebred or something where they're stuck in a frame. That's not what dressage is about. Dressage is about making the horse, you know, fluid in the frame, that we can go from a long frame into a collected frame if we want to. And remembering that collection means the lowering of the 3 joints of the hind legs. It does not mean shortening the stride and getting the horse to jack its front legs up. That's what saddlebred riding is. And once again, we need to get everybody really becoming more clear of what dressage is and what it is not. You know, if a horse is hollow in the back, you're not doing dressage. Because remember, at the key heart of dressage is that idea of doing what's best for the horse. And it's never best for the horse to ride it hollow, simply, no matter how fancy it may look. I guarantee you the horse is not enjoying it, which is, of course, why we see so many horses with swishing tails. And they're like, look at this horse. I mean, it's totally accepting this work. That's how it should be all through the levels. You know, if you run into a wall that you feel like you have to push through with your horse, you probably shouldn't be, because it's probably not a wall at all. It's just, you know, it's not the horse being obnoxious. It's just the horse's physical inability. When horses are sufficiently developed to collect, for instance, it isn't hard to collect them. They do it with very little effort whatsoever if they have the physical strength to do it. So taking our time, and that's why I love to see people like you just taking your time. You know, you're never going to hurt the horse by taking your time in what you do, and just knowing that once you get this horse going more consistently over its back, that's going to go faster day by day by day, to the point where the horse will really start to develop beautifully for you. But remembering also that it takes that 2 years of development time, and it doesn't matter whether the horse is 2 or 20. It takes the same amount of time for the back to go through that change. So, you know, we'd like to start with our horses when we're first starting them at 3 and 4 years old to be working this way, but it doesn't matter if they haven't. They'll all be helped by working this way, and you can improve and correct many, many, many problems. And they are all corrected basically the same way, getting horses over their back, comfortable in the stride, so they can accept the work without difficulty. Nice little shoulder in you're doing there, not bad at all. Once again, I'd like to see the horse a little lower in this, but that's not bad. You're getting to soften a little bit, though it's not quite consistent there. But all of this is really good work that's leading up to something. And that's a perfect example. The horse is spooked at something. You just sit there and just act like nothing happened and just put him right back into the work and go on. The biggest problem you can ever make when a horse does something like that is to then stop them and pet them on the neck, because you've now rewarded them for doing it. So whatever horses do, we just ignore it and go on. Bend them away from whatever they're looking at and keep going. We act like it's nothing there. If you act like there's nothing there and nothing to get upset about, they will start acting like that too, because they will follow the leader, so to speak, and that's what we must become. That's a nice stretch in the walk there. But you're really doing a lot really, really well here. This is really good, and once again, you know, you're getting this horse there a big percentage of the time, getting really good work. Nice little leg yield off the rail. That's good. Responded a couple of steps and then right back. That's good. That's a good way to do leg yields, just back and forth off the rail. That's a good way to do it, down the center line, doing it that way, just back and forth. But we'd like to see the horse long. We want to get to the point where we can do that in a really long frame. But, you know, as I said, once again, you know, a great percentage of the time you're getting the horse right. I would like to see you get her, you know, to start, when you started your trot, I would have liked to have seen it from one of those moments when the horse was a little bit deeper. But you know, having said that, you're getting it right. And once again, at this level, until we have the horse consistent in the bridle, remember, we never now want to worry about the transitions between the gaits until we can keep the horse consistent in the gaits. Then you'll find that all those little problems about the transitions from gait to gait will just disappear instead of becoming a big fight like we see it happening so much. So with a horse at this level, just what you did, just send them on, don't make a big deal about it, and then begin to soften them. Now, interestingly enough, I like this trot better under saddle than I like the trot that you were getting on the lunge line. It's a little more active, and maybe that's because you're on her, and you can send him forward. But that's a better trot, even though I'd like to see it stretching a little more. There you go, like that. That's really quite good. Now, this is really good work that you're getting done here. To do this on your own, you've really developed a nice feel. You're keeping the slack out of the reins as you get the horse to stretch down. Because remember, you don't want there to be just the weight of the rein consistently till you get all the way down there. Now, on the way down, you're keeping your contact consistently, but a little more than the weight of the rein, but not permanently. You're not just locking your hands. Your hands can never just become locked up. So once again, we see this canter work, and this is what I was talking about. As you can see, you know, this horse just cannot get over its back. Immediately the neck, you see how you neck the horse is there, and it just kind of goes hollow. And that's what I'm talking about, that down, how that's kind of stumbly bit looking down there. Now your ground looks quite hard in the arena that you're in there, which may be more to do with that. And of course the horse was completely hollow, so it had to make the downwards transition on its forehand. So that didn't have much value for the horse. So I said, I would stay away from the mounted canter for a little while. You know, give it another month or so. Come back, you know, once again, you can try it every week and see what happens, but I wouldn't expect it to really be there until you see the horse rounder in the canter on the lunge line. When you see that happening, then it's probably going to get better under saddle, which it certainly will. So let's stay away from that work, more the trot work. You're doing a nice job on all of this. Once again, it's a little inconsistent here. And that was a good choice just to come back because the horse got the canter. You can see how out of whack that put the horse because you had a really good trot going. And then we went into the canter and the horse just became so hollow that just, you know, was not good, a not good use of your time, so to speak, because that will not have done anything but just make the horse uncomfortable. Then you came back to the trot and it all fell apart. So, but I like how you're coming back to the walk here and just reestablishing that. Get that stretch going again, and that's the cardinal rule of classical dressage. Instead of trying to go through the wall when you run into a difficulty, just take the step back to what came before it. So, you know, your trot was a little bit of a mess there after that canter, so you just came back and walked, and that's the good thing. Get him stretching back in the walk and just kind of start again. Remember that the stretching, also the beauty of it, it kind of erases the mistakes that you made in the mind of the horse, you know, whereas if you had kept, you know, fighting with the horse because you were trying to get it to do something in the canter that it is physically incapable of doing, you would have gotten in a fight with it. And if you were one of these very talented bad riders, you would have ended up breaking the horse over in the neck and pulling its neck over, and you would have thought, oh, the horse is on the bridle now. But it would not have been on the bridle. It would have just been broken over in the neck, the way we see so many of them, and, you know, maybe slowed down. Once again, coming back to a pretty good walk. I like to see it stretching a little bit deeper there. So, you know, you got the horse going really good in the trot before that canter, and that would have been the place to stay and just try to keep it there over its back a little bit longer. Remember, that's, you know, you're only doing the horse any good when the horse is over its back in terms of it's going to be developing the right kind of muscles. Though you've come back to a really good walk, and that's really good. That's where you should always end every session, by the way. Every session, mounted session, should end and begin in the same place. Doesn't matter whether the horse is just beginning or it's Grand Prix. It should be able to stretch to the ground, stretch out, and loosen up. You know, it's like a person. You don't go to the gym and do the heaviest thing you can do. A marathon runner doesn't go and run a marathon every day. You know, this is the thing to realize, that the hard things we do with horses should be the exception to the rule. Jumping, for instance. When I was a kid, you know, we jumped horses at the most 3 days a week, and usually 2 days a week. And once the horses were experienced jumpers, we jumped them once a week, and sometimes the really experienced ones jumped once before a horse show, you know, because you just can't keep doing the most extreme thing. And I will say, it's the same thing in every sport, you know. Yes, there are some good Western riders. My father told me when I was a young man that, you know, all great horsemen know the same thing. Now, that's starting to be a really nice walk there. You can just see how every time she stretches down. Once again, he said every great horseman know the same thing. It doesn't matter. I mean, you know, there's great people who ride Western, but all the sports have become way too impatient. You know, they're willing to burn out these beautiful animals in the pursuit of ribbons. And it's mostly because people just simply don't know. Unfortunately, you know, most people come into the horse world now that, you know, they're first generation horse people in their families. You know, they're not as fortunate as I was to have had a father who was a horse trainer, you know, so, and they fall in with these trainers, and, you know, we have just seen the whole thing degrade so much that they just think that this is what's normal because this is what they see trainers doing who are winning ribbons, you know. And that's where, you know, we must take umbrage, you know, with our organizations that have allowed this to happen, that we've allowed, you know, the scoring, which always used to be, you know, the thing that really told, you know, because you could win your blue ribbon, but if you only got a 49%, you know, everybody knew that, you know, it wasn't, you know, and you would know. Once again, I want to say how much better trot this is here. It's a little more active under saddle, even though it's not consistent, but you do get her more active there. So, once again, so let's not be impatient. Take your time, like Val is doing here with this horse, and this is going to turn into a beautiful horse. A year from now, this will look like a lovely picture. There you go, all the way down there. You're having some really nice moments. There. Now, once again, I said that's more like I want to see your trot on the lunge line about as active as I'm seeing it here. And that would really help him a great deal. But you're doing a great job of working on your own. And once again, you're never going to hurt the horse by taking your time the way you're doing, as opposed to, you know, putting it in some ridiculous rig that's trying to force the horse's heads down. You know, it just seems like every year they come out with more and more of these devices, you know, that are intended to, you know, stick horses in some kind of frame or other that's supposed to look like training. Well, none of those things actually work. But you're doing a good job here. So again, this trot will get more consistent. I like that. Good job. I like how you're just staying off the horse's back a little bit. That's good. And remember, we never want to sit on a horse until it's sit in the trot until it is over its back. If we do, we will make the horse's back sink even more than it was. So that has to be your cardinal rule. Once you understand that, it will also save you a lot of pain. So same thing here in this canter, though this is a little better in this direction. Not quite as hollow as the other canter was, but still, like right there, it's, you know, I just don't feel like it's round enough to really do you any good. So I'd stay away from that, you know, maybe once in a while. Now, that's just your footing there, but you can see the horse is so weak that, you know, it hits a little deep spot in the sand or hard spot, and it kind of, you know, the hocks end up falling apart back there. So let's stay away from that canter. For the most part, you're getting really good trot until you can really get it consistent. Really work on just getting this trot at one speed and really consistent over the back. You're doing a wonderful job of this, and if you keep it up, this is going to turn into a really nice horse. Once again, look how different the horse is starting to move here. So this horse is quite capable of doing some wonderful work in the future. So keep up the good work. I look forward to seeing another submission from you in the not too distant future. Thank you so much for caring about your horse and working with Art to Ride. There, that's really nice there. You're getting some really good moments. And once again, that's when your moments you want to just come back to the walk and just let it stretch out again. There you go. And always end on that good note. Always end on the best stretch you can get. There. Always recognizing, yeah, like how you took your time there. Not bad at all. Took them a little bit of time to make that recovery. Great work. Look forward to seeing you again. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride.